Well, welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. Take two, Ed. Take two.
I know. I'm so sorry my patch cables were acting up. You know, these things happen, but you carry on and make a show anyway, right?
See, you're talking about, look, space, the idea of space being a thing. We barely know how to work our technology now. Like, I have trouble on Facebook. Like, I end up posting something I thought was only going to be to my friends. Next thing I know, it's like in a hashtag group or something where I have a bunch of people like commenting and putting their opinion in. I'm like, oh, the world of social media, how I love you so.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, it's amazing. I sent an audio message to a producer just trying to help him out in a story. And then he said, "Oh my God, I really like your voice. I want you to be in my audio drama." So by sending an audio message through Facebook Messenger, I got a role. So it's kind of weird, the world we live in, that things like that tend to happen, you know?
There's a thing called drunk texting where, like, don't text when you're drunk because it usually comes off like pretty slurred. Like, if you look back at a lot of those, I get that when I'm like half asleep. Like, somebody woke me up and I just immediately, my mind goes, I have to answer back to this like DM or something. And I looked at it the next day and I was like, that person, no wonder they didn't respond back, because you can't even read it. It's like, I tried to say, yeah, that sounds good, and it came out like cheese. And I was like, I didn't even, like, my mind thought I typed it perfectly, but no, I did not even close.
Oh gosh. I have the situation where, because I've written for like so many years of my life, when I'm drunk, I can write in complete articulate sentences. It's really kind of a frightening skill I have. Or I mean, I'm not sure if you call it a skill or a malady, but basically.
That's a story of a movie. Imagine if you got drunk.
There was one time, man, like years ago, I got into trouble by sending this incredibly articulate email that I was sometimes when you've had those nights, you get a little hopped up. And I sent a friend a message, and I had no memory of sending it because I had all this vodka. And then the next morning, I'm like, Jesus Christ, that's really scary. That's scary that you could write like basically like this meticulously argued 600-word essay in the form of an email. And then I said to my friend, my God, here's the deal. I'm cutting down on the sauce.
It's like, imagine if you couldn't write cursive before, but then when you get hammered, you're just like a poet. Like, you just start writing out like the complete works of Shakespeare. Like, what is happening right now? Like, that's an amazing ability you have.
It's kind of like a weird form of infinite monkeys. There's got to be someone who's completely smashed off their gourd who's capable of writing The Great Gatsby or something.
Now,
I mean, Stephen King, he wrote like the Tommyknockers and Cujo. And one of them sucks, but Cujo's a pretty good novel. He has no memory of writing any of those. He was drunk and coked out of his mind when he wrote that. Did you know that?
I know he threw a lot of his works away, and his wife like had to make him like dig it out of the trash and turn it into something.
Well, that was his early days when he was working as a teacher. But like at one point he was like, heavily into cocaine and drinking, and he quit drinking. But basically he wrote Cujo and Tommyknockers, and he says, I have no memory of writing this, which is freaky because Cujo's a pretty good book, you know?
I wish I had an ability like that, like be able to create something with just being drunk. But then that's what I don't like, though, is if you have that ability when you're hammered, it shouldn't take a supplement or something to get you there. So that means you have it naturally. So how do you awaken that?
Well, I mean, first of all, I don't write anything unless I'm completely sober and clear-headed. I find that writing drunk, you lack the precision. You're just blotting out your emotions, and you're not really writing what is truly inside you. You don't have the courage of your convictions. You have the courage of your loudishness. It's like, but going back to the text situation, I actually got into trouble with a friend recently because I'd like to be very responsive by text. As you know, when we set this thing up, I'm really responsive. If I get your message, I instantly reply to it.
The lack of communication there was terrible.
Anyway, the point is like I responded to a friend completely not aware of the time. I was like, it was 9 a.m. my time, and I just sent her a response, and then she replied saying, "What the hell are you doing texting me at 6 a.m? 6 a.m. is for like, the world is on fire or something like this." And I just was being responsive. I just was like methodically and just like, I'm going to be responsive. I'm going to make sure everybody gets responded to, and that you have that too. So now you have to gauge time zones sometimes in relation to people for text, but you can do it with email. It's fine, or even like messages through Twitter or things like that, or Facebook, because people see those when they see those. But a text, It's like, it's like if it's a 6 a.m. text, for some people, it freaks them out. Rightly so,
Yeah, well, you're telling me I get DMs from people in Australia where it's like, 4 o'clock in the morning or something here, and it's like end of the night there. Like, I'm just sitting there like, wait a minute. Like, it's hard because then when you send a message, it's like, well, then just don't respond. It's like, I have manners. Whenever I see a message pop up, I need to respond to it of like, hey, I'm here. Like, I'm not going to make you wait all day unless I see someone that I don't really want to answer to or something. I had to cut off all social media recently. Like, I had to.
Oh, really? It's good, isn't it?
Well, I went on my phone and I went on to notifications and everything, and I turned off every single thing, even on Twitter. So now Twitter's the worst one. It's where if you get tagged in anything, anybody retweets it, your phone's blowing up. So like one day my phone was like having a seizure, and I was like, what is happening? I'm in the middle of a store right now. I haven't talked to anybody, but somebody put me in a follow for Friday or something. Next thing I know, it's getting retweeted by like 80 people. I had to turn it all off. I was like, I'll just stick to DMs only.
Did you see that documentary on Netflix? What is it? The Social Dilemma?
Dude, I knew about so much of that shit before they even released that.
Yeah, but to see it dramatized like that with like, let's go ahead and it just was really fucking creepy. It's just like, can I swear on your show? By the way, I say fuck a lot.
I think I've done it like 4 times already.
Okay, yeah. I have, this is the funny thing. I have no sense of how often I swear. One time I was in a Park Slope restaurant with some friends and we were having some dinner, and I was telling this was back in the pre-pandemic days, and I was telling a story and I was like, fuck. And then this guy turns around and he looks to me and he goes, excuse me. And I didn't know who the guy was. Maybe I'd met him or something. It's like, hey, how you doing? It's like, you're the children. I'm like, oh yes, you've got nice kids there. Yeah. Hey, how you doing? Like, the language. And this is like Park Slope. We're in Brooklyn, where it's like you would think people would be a little bit more loosey-goosey when it comes to dropping F-bombs here left and right. And I just do it casually in my vernacular. And this guy just gave me just the side eye all the time as I'm sitting here with these friends here. It's just like crazy, man.
I don't even know I do it sometimes. I was at my grandparents' house and like, and even 'tis the season for it. It was coming up like around Thanksgiving. We're having this family event, and next thing I know, I'm just dropping like curse bombs. Like at 17 years old, like I was cutting wood outside, so I was going to use the word fuck at any point.
Of course, you've got to let off some steam, man. And that reminds me of this story. Like last Christmas, I was with a bunch of friends and everything, and there were a lot of kids there, and one of my dear friends had invited me over, and I was like, okay, I'm around kids, and I actually lasted 3 hours without saying fuck, and even my friend was like, Ed, that was really good. I was really impressed. 3 hours without dropping fuck. I mean, for me, I was very proud of that moment.
My issue is like, how much of the world's problems would be solved if people could just curse openly without it being so stigmatized. It's like, oh, you're angry. I'm like, no, just do it. You drop something in your house, say the word shit. It's going to make you feel 1,000 times better.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what the whole point of swearing. There's a wonderful book by Ashley Montague called The Anatomy of Swearing. I highly recommend it. He's this distinguished scholar. I found this I bought it for $1 at a used bookstore, and it's a really entertaining book. And he argues that yes, there's a great power in swearing. Initially going ahead saying, by zounds. Yeah, swearing, of course, goes to cursing the gods. But there is palpable evidence that swearing actually reduces your stress levels, allows for an expression. I am a big proponent for swearing. Not only that, but how many brilliant people do you know swear like a fucking sailor? Even
Neil deGrasse Tyson swears, and people are like, wait a minute.
Yeah, he definitely does. Yeah.
Because all right, so this is our second recording, but what I was telling you about Neil deGrasse Tyson when he was talking about how he was looking at the movie Gravity, and he was talking about all these things that were wrong with it, and we were kind of talking a little bit about the fact of being in space, nobody ever goes to the bathroom or something. Because the realness of it, he was posting on Twitter flaws with this movie, and people would comment, and he'd be like, people are telling me to shut the fuck up because it's a movie, and I'm like, it's not the fact that he's trying to point them out. It's also educating you on letting you know some of this stuff isn't as real as it thinks, because I think everybody has this distorted perception of what space is when it comes to Star Wars or Star Trek or something. I'm like, it's not always like that. It's not probably going to be anything like you think it is. It's probably going to be just like living on Earth, except there's going to be way more restrictions when it comes to wear a fucking helmet all the time or you're going to die. That's why I tell people, don't be so obsessed with wanting to be in outer space, because I think the movies hype it up way too much.
Yeah. No, exactly. And it's going to be terrible living. And again, like, I know that going to the bathroom in our present 21st century is already like filled with like, it's like a 30-minute procedure if you do it on a space station or on a space shuttle. You have to consider gravity. You have to like, clamp yourself down. It's crazy. It's like,
Yeah, like I mean, the whole factor of like taking a shower, for instance, wouldn't the water just float around unless you have like a gravity stabilization chamber or something to be able to do it? And like you don't see like even when I was reading like the account, I actually had a person on my podcast who's aspiring to be an astronaut way back in the day, and she
yeah,
was telling me how like a lot of these astronauts they're up there for so long and they don't shower, so when they come back, like that station is ripe, like it is ripe for just BO everything. And I mean, even
yeah,
eating becomes a task. Everything becomes a
yeah,
task. And I'm like, I know we would end up getting acclimated to living up there and stuff, but like there was that one movie where the kid was born on Mars and he spent
yeah.
like most of his teenage years, like all the way up until he was a teenager in Mars. And then he went to Earth and then he died because his body was so used to Mars gravity, which is like 30% ours or something.
Yeah. Which movie is this?
I remember Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about it on that podcast I was
How
listening
the hell
to.
do I not? How the hell do I not actually find out about this movie? I mean, I'm thinking of going Get Your Ass to Mars and Total Recall, but
But it was like it was like the boy from Mars, where it was like he literally
oh,
he was born on
boy
Mars.
in the plastic bubble transposed to Mars, right?
Yeah, and then so he's trying to have a relationship. He's trying to talk in school at the age like a
Yeah,
teenager wouldn't want to. And he ends up dying early. It's like that one movie where the kid's heart was too big. So he was
yeah,
like a really small, like crippled boy, but he had like this big guy who was kind of dumb, and they would
yeah,
form one person by like he would put him on his shoulders or something. It was a really heartfelt movie back in the day. But the
yeah,
kid's heart was too big for his body, and he knew he was going to die eventually. So this was like the boy with Mars when he comes down from a different planet or something where he was so used to that gravity. It's like Superman. You got to
mhm.
adjust to the thing, which we will eventually adjust to living in space. But I mean, our minds and knowledge of space is just always changing 24/7, much like any option when you go out into the world today. It's like, well, I'm going to have mac and cheese today, or I'm going to have a burger. It's always changing. So I'm like, I don't think we're like, if I was going to put a question to you, as in, how long do you think until we're able to actually survive in space? What would you say? Like, give me a time period. You think in the next 50 years, next 100 years? Because
Yeah,
Jetsons was what, 2020, and we're not even close to that.
yeah. We have hoverboards, but not flying cars. It's
Yeah.
interesting. Like, in order for the inventions that people imagine to come true, it needs to be comparatively recent. We just didn't have we don't have the technology. We didn't have the technology back in the 50s and the 60s to imagine. But on the other hand, like Star Trek, we got our communicators with the cell phones. I mean, and there is a lot of evidence out there that Star Trek has been kind of it's almost informed the design of a lot of our technology. The touch panel screens that were ubiquitous in Next Generation, now they're all over the place with tablets. I
Yeah,
mean,
we got
the tablet is arguably like one of those little report things that Picard signed off on.
we
It's
literally
like,
have like iPads in the walls where you can like design
yeah.
your house that way and stuff. And I like I told you, I am a Star Wars fan.
I know. We couldn't agree. Just as like just
That's
as
the
I
only one podcast I really have had that hasn't gone
ah
well. I had a Star Trek podcaster on here before, and I've
yeah
always mentioned I predicted like coronavirus as a joke. I said, like, I talked to him because his day job was a stock marketer, and it's the only episode I
yeah.
haven't uploaded. I know I've said I've uploaded in the past, but it's still saved on my podcast. But we were talking
Oh,
about the
did it
stock.
go? Did it not go very well?
Well, no, it was just the weirdest thing because I don't know Star Trek. So I was asking him questions like,
Ah,
what is the best thing about Star Trek? Like, if you were going to sell me the show, how would you sell your show? And then like,
yeah.
how would you sell it to me? Like, get a friend to watch it because I don't know, you just have to watch it. And it was just like, so like nails on chalkboard watching paint dry, where I was just like, all right, maybe we can just reconvene this whenever after I watch Star Trek. But I told him for like the first 30 minutes, it was fun. It was good because we were talking
Yeah.
about stocks. And I was like, the safest stock to buy into has to be the toilet paper stock because it
Yeah.
never goes up and it never goes down. And then right after I said that, 2 weeks later, coronavirus hit and the toilet paper stock went through the fucking roof. So I
Yeah.
was like, I have proof of it, but it's like, did
I believe you. I believe you. Okay, so there's one story of the gray area. It's Paths Not Taken, Chapter 5. And I actually this was set in 2023 in a parallel universe. And I actually predicted almost everything that happened. So much so that I have this newscast going on in the back, and I had to remove news items, and I had to work with the actor remotely to record a few more and I also had to pretend to be a Southern preacher on the radio because I ran out of time. I had enough news items for this like little 3 or 4 minute strip of the radio playing in the background, but then I ended up having to interrupt the newscast to have a crazy sort of Bible thumper. And I'm like, I want you to go ahead and take the law in your hands, which I've actually played now.
Good as shit, dude.
I played 2 preachers now under pseudonyms in the gray area. One is the preacher. I don't know. I keep going back to the preacher for some reason. There's the preacher on the subway that is in compassion fatigue and that makes a reappearance from a different vantage point in Dearer Than Earsight. That's one other thing I do with the show. It's some of the incidents you see doesn't necessarily mean that we're not going to see them again, except from a different perspective. So we have this story of Jenna in compassion fatigue saying describing this crazy man on the subway who's preaching, right? So that's in the actual therapy session in compassion fatigue. Then we go to Dearer Than Earsight, and we're actually on that subway in that instant. And the hilarious thing is I was worried about this because I'm actually playing a character named Ed Champion, but I'm also playing the preacher. So I had to mix this enough, and I had to actually modulate my performance where I was like, yes, hi, I'm Ed Champion, hello. And then because I had to separate my voice from sounding like the hello, the Lord saves. And another funny story is when I recorded that with Delany, who plays Jenna, we recorded that, and the guy downstairs was so what the hell is going on? Banged on the door because we were just really getting into it. And that's
when you voice that.
Yeah. But she was and she was screaming at me. It was in the middle of the day, so I figured it was fair game. That's usually when I record. Yeah. But there's been a couple of times where the guy from downstairs has banged on. One time I had I had a really traumatic scene involving crying and screaming. Same thing. What's going on? Are you am I destroying? Am I hurting someone here? No, the acting is just that good. And the funny thing is the most intense moments are actually the easiest sometimes.
What would you consider your best or favorite voice you can do? Impression? Are you an impression man or just a different voice changing?
A lot of it is sort of instinct. And it's funny, I was actually talking with a friend last night about this, and she knows I can do voices, and I just kind of said, just give me a voice to do. And the only voice I wouldn't do was Trump because I'm just sick of him. I basically was just kind of any voice she did. I'm trying to work on Andrew Cuomo because he has a very interesting voice where he's he has the pauses like this when he goes ahead and talks. And it's kind of it's kind of similar to Jerry Seinfeld. What's the deal with
Jerry Seinfeld?
Oh yeah, I much prefer Larry David to Jerry Seinfeld.
Oh my God! Yeah. I mean, come on, what's the deal with airplane food? I'm like, dude, just shove his head in a garbage disposal. I don't care. Yeah. It's just I can't stand that show. I do a pretty good Barack Obama. I'm not.
Oh yeah, well, let's hear it.
My fellow Americans, we are gathered here today to support a nation of founding fathers.
Oh, that's not bad. It's got the pauses.
I haven't done that one in a long time.
He has a book out. I don't know he made that 60 Minutes appearance. But here's the thing that's interesting about and you're doing this. You can make up for the inadequacies of not getting a dialect right by paying attention to the pauses and the rhythms. And it's clearly that you do that with Obama. If you get the pauses and the rhythms down, then you practice a voice. Then you can usually get the dialect. And there's actually funny story. So I've acted here and there. I do voiceover. I'm asked to do things. I'm like the world's. I don't really audition. I'm just asked to do things. I'm amazed that actors can audition because here you are bearing your soul for someone who just does not give a shit. And it's every time I have any actor come to audition, or usually it's just a file they send me, I write personalized emails to every single actor telling them what I liked about them. I'm sorry you weren't right for the role. And I sometimes find a way to work them into the show later.
That's like giving the mail person a holiday card. You're very, very
well,
helpful.
it's not only that, but it's just, and this is, I'm not sure if you've ever tried you work in a gym, but if you job hunt right now during the pandemic, you are now faced with complete and total indifference. I face this myself. I have friends who have faced this myself, and it's demoralizing. You're putting yourself on the line and you're bearing your soul. And our response now in America and in the Western world is to basically just say, oh, well, we don't have to respond or give this person any kind of decency or anything like that. But, you know, honestly, if you take the time out to respond, it doesn't take that long. I mean, spread the love to people. Let people know that, you know, you listen carefully to what they had to give you. I mean, it's a basic sort of thing, I think. And like, I've had actors go, my God, I've never received any email like this, because nobody does it. Casting directors and casting agents just basically say, fuck it. You know, it's like, well, I have all these people coming in. Yeah, but these people are people.
It's my issue of what's the problem with the corporation, and a lot of people actually take the time to do so. Walmart, for instance, I worked there like 5 winters ago.
5 winters. The fact you register your work with winters says it all.
It was the fact of like when they give out like things for the holidays, it was a thing that they would give another person. So it was like just given like, oh, it's like a copy and paste email. Like you're sending it to thousands of people and not really meaning it to them. Yeah, it's nice that you sent them that, but nobody's actually getting a personalized thing. But what I really loved about my other job, which was at a hotel for a short period of time,
that must have been interesting. Fawlty Towers, without Basil Fawlty.
Well, 3 years working there, the one thing I really appreciated was the fact that they knew my birthday, and that I would get a personalized card from a lot of people that actually cared about me there. They would write something special inside the card. I'm a big card man. I'm a big guy like that, like circle and stuff you like. That's what you need to do. If you're going to say no to somebody or sorry, I don't think you're qualified for the job, don't ghost them. Just send them a message letting them know, hey, I don't think you're right for the position, because that means 1,000 times more when you work with someone and they actually take the time to be like, hey, hope you and your family have a happy holidays. And they send that to you and you're like, well, thanks. Or include something you know about them personally.
You know James Lipton of Inside the Actors Studio, who passed away, I think this year?
I don't.
Okay, well, anyway, I interviewed him years ago. And the guy, like when I went to his townhouse, he had this full spread, he really went all out to accommodate me. He was actually, I had a lot of fun with him, and he actually turns out to have like a really wonderful sense of humor, despite the sort of pretentious kind of persona that he offered inside the actor studio. But this guy sent me a Christmas card every year until he passed away. I got a Christmas card from James Lipton. Like, now granted, I went to his townhouse and he had like all of these framed photos of him with like Dustin Hoffman and Al Pacino, like, and he's all acting like, oh, this is a little bit embarrassing. That's my James Lipton voice. This is a little bit embarrassing. And I'm thinking to myself as I'm watching this, no, you're not. You show this to every single person who comes in here. But when I saw that I immediately understood James Lipton. Like, oh, he just wants to be liked by famous people. And we had a nice conversation based off of that. So it's like, but the thing is, it's like the fact that he actually takes the time to sign a card and send it to me. I'm not really a Christmas person, but like, it's really kind of nice. Like that James Lipton would take some at the time some insignificant jackass podcaster and basically go ahead and send a Christmas card. That's kind of, if we could actually restore that in American life, we wouldn't have so many angry people. People just want to be acknowledged. People just want to know that their lives matter, Well,
you want to feel like you left a mark, which is like why I have sponsors and stuff, but they're not like giant companies. Like I could easily go for the common one, Manscapes or something, but my sponsors are my friends. They're people I've had on the podcast that I've developed a relationship with that text me, ask me how I'm doing, letting me know like, hey, like hope you have a happy holidays or something. That's what you want, is that you want to feel like you left a little scratch or a mark on there. And you don't really see that a lot in the world today. It's always this kind of like, do your work, go home, do your work, go home type scenario. And we're shifting into a world where compassion is lacking. And I think that's why we're so ready to get the fuck off of this planet. It doesn't make sense because we think we're going to find something better out there. And I'm like, no, we need to work on stuff here. As much as I love space and much as I love learning and trying to figure out what keeps my ego in check, for instance, I have a huge ego issue and I get complimented. There's this fucking demon in the back of my head, like, yes, give me more. But
it can be reformed. I'm a reformed egomaniac. So
I
it takes some time. It just takes humility and gratitude and positivism. and you become a lot easier, and you actually accept yourself more, and you accept your fuck ups, and you accept your decisiveness. You could be there. You could be there in 5 or 10 years. I have faith in you, brother.
Like I said, I'm already there, but that voice will never go away. I always am trying to be humble on this. What I've known from a long time, I've had this huge ego issue. So what I do is the other day I looked up in the middle of the night at the stars, and I was like, how minuscule are my issues, my problems, where I want to be pissed off at the world, that there's this whole giant functioning rock that's floating through space. And upon that, thousands and thousands of other ones that might have life, might not. I don't know.
Yeah.
But none of anything that I do in this next moment, whether it's jump off the roof or whether it's whatever, drive to the grocery store and get an energy drink or something, none of those make even a slight hair fracture into the giant picture of things. So it lets you know when you're being consumed by your problems and how big or a inflated ego you might get. Just know that it might be in your realm, but in the realm of the whole entire world, it's nothing. And my eyes truly opened up to this when I was wondering, like, how the fuck do people fish? Like, it didn't make any sense to me. I did it a little bit. I caught a trash can one time, but it's not. To me, it was just like, so monotonous. But it's somebody's like pleasure thing. And someone told me, they go, well, it's like a different world. And then I was like, yeah, if you really analyze what fishing is, you are literally taking this floating bobber type thing with a fishing rod, throwing it into a whole nother worldly dimension where a bunch of fucking sea creatures live, and you're basically you're experiencing alien life, basically.
It's basically a Star Wars scenario, you know?
Nuts.
I mean, well, the thing is, what you say there is actually really true. I think that the sooner you actually come to terms with the fact that you are going to be insignificant, you are going to be forgotten, 100 years from now, they're not going to care about this conversation unless some sort of alien life form says, yes, Robbie and Ed were talking about this. Let's try to understand humanity. But that's like a rare
You're going to hear a bunch of aliens screaming, go back to the Trump impression. I want to hear
it. Yeah. There you go. But ultimately, the sooner you accept that, the more beautiful life is, the more able you're willing to go ahead and try things. The more, I found myself just, when I finally just accepted, like, you know what, audience matters, but also audience doesn't matter. Audience should not get in the way of art. Other people's judgments should not get in the way of you trying new things or living. I mean, that guitar over there, I didn't have a guitar 2 years ago. When I moved to New York, I sold all my guitars, and I just would be that guy who would go into Guitar Center and just play occasionally. And then that thing is like really saved my life during the pandemic, and it's kept me safe.
You weren't the asshole that brought the guitar to the party that only knew like the same chords over and over again.
Oh, no, dude. Well, no, actually, a couple things happened. When I picked up the guitar up for the first time in 12 years, like, I was a totally different person. Like, all of a sudden, like, the last time I played the guitar, I was like, oh God, I just fucking suck. And then all of a sudden I'm playing it now, and I'm just rolling through those gaps. And I was like, whoa. The other thing that happened is that about 8 dozen songs in the last 2 years came out of my head. And on top of that, people seem to really like them. And I was actually, before the pandemic, I was actually hitting the open mic circuit a bit. And I was starting to get people say, hey, those are really good songs. You got a nice voice. And before the pandemic, I'm also a karaoke guy. I think, I'm not sure if you gathered that, but yeah, it's like these kinds of singing and music, it's just really, I had no idea that I had this particular part of me. The songs that are at the beginning of Paths Not Taken that I am singing, the only reason I'm singing them is because we couldn't get the actors together. We recorded all of the dialogue for the entire second season before the pandemic. I mean, literally recorded the last bit around March 15th or 16th. And it was just like, oh my God, I can't believe we got it, because this is going to last maybe 6 months. And I wasn't able to record the songs with my 2 actors, because when you're directing music, when you're directing other people to sing, it's just really difficult to do remotely. You can do acting, you can do that, but singing is a totally different animal, and also, not to speak of the latency issues that Zoom meetings have this problem with, which also makes karaoke difficult through Zoom. So as such, by default, luckily, the actual person who is singing that is an AI program. So it stands to reason the AI program could be me, So I basically had to record and sing the songs, and now I have people who are complimenting me more on Rather than the 300 tracks of sound design I did for Paths Chapter 5, I have people constantly messaging, oh my God, you sing really well. And this was a total fluke, a total act. It was like me, like, I have to get this show released. Fuck the pandemic. My attitude was like, fuck the pandemic. We are releasing this nonetheless, you know?
When you're doing impressions, for instance, like for me, the way I
Yeah,
consider it is I can do an impression if I heard that person say those words. Like
yeah.
even with vocal impressions, like if you want to talk about one of the most amazing, talented singers, I think in my mind is the singer for AC/DC. I mean, his whole
Oh,
like,
yeah.
yeah, like his voice is like, I'm drinking gasoline.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah,
that screech.
and then there's also the Bon Scott days before, and then unfortunately he died, of course, you know. So,
Well, his whole story is insane that I really appreciate
yeah.
because it shows how much someone will go so far into their craft, which is like kind of
Mhm.
what we were talking about earlier with the whole like way that we think of how big our problems really are is
Yeah.
you have to release the constraints of your ego. You have to
Yes.
release the constraints of what people will think about you if you do something. Like it's a
Yeah.
lot of voice actors that I talk to or people that do audio dramas. The reason why I asked you, like, you don't mind being on video. Surprisingly, that's a big turn down for a lot of people on the aspect of they
Yeah.
don't want to show their face. They are very, very judgy about themselves. And when they do their voices and stuff, they don't want to look ridiculous and then have that out there. But I'm like,
Yeah.
it shows how enthusiastic you can be about something. The singer for AC/DC went deaf through his
Yes.
music. So he couldn't
Yeah.
hear the notes. So he would just sing and hopefully the band would know what part he was at and start playing. They had to work around him, which is very, very difficult to do. But when you have such love for that type of craft, when you have such love for someone like that, like a friend of yours that is suffering from something, he ended up
Yes.
now recently getting his hearing fixed, so now he can sing again. So it's freaking insane. But the
He
whole
got a cochlear implant.
yeah, he got his he had a major surgery on his ears where now he can
Oh, yeah,
actually
ear surgery. Okay, yeah, I remember reading something about this. I'm not sure the extent of like the work that was done on him, but you know, yeah.
but
I mean,
it's
when you're surrounded by like constant loud guitar for 30 fucking years,
yeah.
you know,
It's a
yeah,
factor of yeah, obviously taking more precautions with like earbuds now when you go you don't want to keep your volume on high 24/7. Next thing you know, you
yeah,
sound deaf. But like the world is so based on judgment, and I talk about it a lot. But what recently came up was an old article that I had forgotten for a very long time, but a woman had made herself blind. And I know how you're thinking, like, what happened? Like, you hear the story of someone got acid tossed on their face.
yeah.
This woman wanted to be blind since she was 14 years old as a little girl. She learned Braille fluently by the age of 21. Her name is Jewel. What she did was, she was actually on Dr. Phil, I think, too. She put drain
Huh.
cleaner in her eyes and permanently blinded herself. And the reason why everyone's like, are you fucking nuts? And she said, no, I just don't like the way I look.
I was about to say, is this like an homage to the Greek tragedies?
It's like, but hearing how someone could say, like, I just don't like the way I look. So you literally take the the gift of sight away from yourself on the aspect of you never have to look in the mirror again. You never have to worry about the constraints of what you look like or how you act. I'm like, that's the issue that needs to get solved. Is like people acting like they have like a Gary V mentality. I'm like, you don't even like the way you fucking look. You won't go to the store naked. You won't go to the
Yeah.
store like whatever without thinking somebody's going to judge me or I might run into this person. So I'm like, you got to have that release of I don't give a shit. And that
Yeah.
I
And
am
we all, to some extent, give a shit in one way or another. We just and the older you get, you discover these things of like, okay, there's this little minor thing. Like, for example, during the pandemic, I went to the beach every week because the buses were free, and the beach turned out to be my replacement to the cafe. Plus, going into the ocean, which I love, you immediately see how insignificant you are. You are in the you walk
it's
2 feet
fucking alien dimension.
it is like you walk 2 feet. Next thing you know, you're like far into the water. You are completely in this unpredictable, chaotic force that is just awesome. That I'm a native Californian. I can use awesome, by the way, like like that. But the one thing I also did was like I still had a one modest body image issue that dates back to like me being a kid and being immensely pale and like other kids giving me shit for it. So I said, you know what, fuck this. I'm gonna like nip this in the bud, and I just like would go there and I would just be shirtless all day. And then when I started doing this, I started seeing all these guys who had let themselves go and they're like 65 walking around. I'm like, what the hell have I been doing all these years?
It's that mentality, dude. I live in a tourist town, and you don't know how many people I see that take their shirt off with such confidence, where I have a six-pack, but I wear hoodies and shit just because I'm body dysmorphic. But it's it's a whole concept of like people like I've been with people where they're like, dude, just take your shirt off and just show this guy up. Like, you're ripped. And I'm like, I don't want to, because the whole aspect of like it's I don't even like taking my shirt off to get in the shower. I'll admit it. I wait till the freaking mirror fogs off before I take my clothes off. And it's just an aspect of how much you can be scarred by something, even though I don't give a shit what I say, what I do out in public. I'm the same as I'm on air as I am off air. There is this is me. I couldn't do this for any longer.
Are you though? Because everybody look, I read
a literary podcast a lot.
Okay, all right. Well, fair enough. I mean, here's the thing. I read a literary podcast for 11 years. Okay. I talked to all these writers. And the one thing is I still had a persona. In fact, probably in talking with you right now, there is probably some element of that persona, although I am trying to be as real as possible. But when we go on air and we're not acting for an audio drama, if you're doing a nonfiction podcast or radio, you are still putting on some kind of a show. You have a different voice. It's not like I'm Robin Williams or anything, and I'm going like, when I get off the air, I'm like, I'm going to talk very softly. It's not like that. But
my parents are in radio, for instance, and that's kind of
really?
I had the opportunity to do that, but I said no because I didn't want someone influencing on my show. And I remember when I first started, my dad asked me, he goes, I've been doing this like 40 years. I could really help you out. I own my own station now. He's like telling me all this thing, like, I'll give you your own segment. I'll get you famous guests. And I'm like, I want to do this my way where I can be myself. And he goes, all right, then what's your voice going to be like? And I'm like, what's my voice going to be like? My voice is going to be me. If I'm fucking doing a podcast at 1 a.m., it's going to be my voice at 1 a.m. He goes, you're not going to do a broadcast? You're like, you're listening to the beat. No, not going to happen, because the hardest thing is, like, even with my family, when I hear them talk normally and then I hear them on air, I'm like, you're using your voice, your voice. I can tell it, because that's not it. And this is me. It's so... Once you release all that stuff about everybody has these imperfections, or they want it to sound good, they want it to sound amazing. My voice is not a voice that is going to be the one that makes your fucking pants wet. Not at all. So I'm okay with that.
Why not, Robin? You can get a lot of women this way.
Totally. I'll be like, I'm wearing khakis, like, the Jake from State Farm.
Oh, yeah. No, but what you're saying, I mean, okay, welcome to Night Vale, all right? I have a lot of problems with Welcome to Night Vale. It's not that it's poorly written. It's not that it's poorly acted, although from my standpoint it is. It doesn't take the radio drama form seriously, because everybody's there, like this, blah, 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 blah. It's just like if you want to connect with people, that's good. If you're doing like a stylized voice like this, hi, hey, Robbie, you'll be amused by that perhaps for about 30 seconds. But after 30 seconds, it will become uninteresting. If you go and opt for the human in your persona or in your characterization, you're going to get more listeners. So when I have people over to record, I have dozens upon dozens of actors here, it's like I am committed to realism, even within the context of a stylized character like the receptionist, Zach Glassman, wonderful man, and we've worked out the receptionist. We worked to get nuances in all of his stuff, even though he is a stylized, happy and vivacious character who likes Tony Danza and hot dogs. We worked to have moments where he would actually be vulnerable. There's stuff in season 3 that I'm talking to him about where I'm going to give him a lot more acting chops, because if I've learned anything from the Star Trek franchise, it's like with Spock and Dana, you have this whole flirtation of a seemingly like one-note character with the human. And that's why those characters have become iconic for a lot of people and much beloved. And everybody seems to like the receptionist as well, for similar reasons, although he's like just a kind of a childish goofball. But you don't get anywhere you're not going to get an audience, I think. Like I really, Welcome to Night Vale got an audience, but I just resent the idea that they kind of cheapen the idea of being human. That's what's so magical about radio. That's what's magical about podcasts. Whenever I listen to a podcast, I get a sense of eavesdropping and feeling something for that conversation. And the people who take the podcast format and just don't, they want to go ahead and make it a cartoon. It's like, what does that say about your worldview? What does that say about like how you think about the larger questions in life? What does that say about like your moral grounding? Like it is, you will get more mileage from being human and hitting as many points in the emotional spectrum as possible than you will doing the cartoonish thing. Although you can't, I mean, there's a pulp impulse in me. I still like to have fun and do like, kind of like over the top kind of stuff, because you got to like, I mean, a lot of the over the top stuff I do is really just to kind of lasso people into the moral questions of the stories. It's really examining these characters as human beings. But I feel that you can't really, I mean, this is something I probably learned from UCB. It's like I took the whole improv core classes, and I think that actually that's what helped me to become not only a better performer, but also a better writer, because you learn two things. One, you have to keep something grounded in reality in order to make it sell, in order to allow for an audience to believe in your kind of crazy situation. If there's some aspect of familiarity, then they're going to buy into it. If you take like something like, okay, so like you order a pizza, right? You order a pizza from a store or from a pizzeria or whatever,
Domino's.
right? Yeah, Domino's, whatever you like, right? If you transpose the behavioral points of that common daily act to, like, say you're ordering like a pizza on Mars or something like that, since we talked about Mars, it's going to be more interesting if there's certain things like calling up the phone and have a lot more potential for being funny and being interesting if you have those behavioral points that we all recognize and act upon in our daily lives, well, such as they are during the pandemic, but before the pandemic, right?
Well, how many prank calls did you get when back in the day when phones, like, that was a big thing, star 69 or something? How many of those people are like inner voice actors that just really wanted a way to be able to test themselves?
It's funny you mentioned that, because like as a teenager, I would call the local FM radio station and I would pretend to be voices. So I would often get on the air. This is growing up in Sacramento. So I'd call them and I just pretend to be some like really disturbed guy in a basement or something. I would do this large amount of boredom. And also, this is before the internet. So we had our phones back then. And I would call various radio stations in Sacramento and just like anonymously pretend to be something. And then sometimes they play that stuff on air because this guy's really completely weird, Or I would do coded messages in like, we had song, this is before your time, but you were probably familiar with it because your parents were in radio or your father, but we had song requests. We didn't have the instant Spotify playlist. If you wanted to hear a song, you either had to buy the fucking album.
I got a fucking phone call right into the man. It's on my birthday. I would always request Panic at the Disco, 9 p.m. My dad would be like, it's going out for little Robbie out there. Happy birthday, bud. I'm going to play 9 p.m.
In all of our sort of like, celebration of playlists, we forget that you used to have to exert real efforts to listen to a song.
Yeah.
You have to wait. Yeah, it's and then eventually we had mixtapes and things like that.
Yeah, carry a fucking CD and be able to put that in your CD player. Then you only want one song on that whole entire CD.
Oh God, that was the greatest racket the recording industry ever had. Here is a great song and 9 shitty tracks. but like, but the thing is like, I think as we continue to like move into now, streaming video has replaced Blu-ray, right? For the most part, we forget that there is something tangible about having a piece of a media in your hands, or there's something tangible about being able to call your local DJ and either pretend to be someone or make a specific song request. Like, weirdly enough, DJs serve as curators to some degree. There's this one Twitter account that like quibbles with any use of curation. Like, if you're not curating and it's not in this high artistic, no, it's fucking curating. The DJ was in some sense like the kind of like almost like a barkeep for teenagers. He was the bartender for teenagers. He could be a patient therapist, like the way that Wolfgang Jack is portrayed in The End of American Graffiti. Thankfully we have that, because that really is how the DJ was for a long period of time,
Not even to blow smoke up, like give my dad's ego if he's listening to a giant like thing here, but like, for instance, everyone loved when my dad was on the air. He was a program advisor and administrator for a lot of radio stations till he ended up taking his own. And I was like, how do you know what to play? Like, do you just get a sense of the room? He's like, I do when I DJ at night. I can know what to play. You play some of the top hits and you throw some good stuff in there. But he goes, when I'm on radio, even with requests, I know what's fucking good. I play what I like. I know what the people want to hear. I know what fits and knows with that. And it's like the same thing with me. Like when I'm vibing in a conversation or something, I know what's going to make somebody's eyes go crazy nuts if they're doing something. Obviously, you want to talk about something. And it's like, that you got to find that niche and find that whatever that vibe is, but also like you got to love what you do too. Like
yes,
for me, everyone always talks about, like, I always see it all the times in the feeds about listenership. Yeah, that's a big why thing we do this. But like I said, I'm being myself here. And honestly, I'm more interested in the conversation. If I get bored with it, I'll either switch it to something else, or I'll fucking try and let you know, like, damn, I don't know about this. Like, I don't really have any info on this. It's not for, we could do an act. We could sit here the whole entire time and be like, well, Ed, let me tell you, let's we could just
do the Green Morning Zoo Hour, right?
Yeah, we can make it as fun as possible, but then it's not real. And then it's like you're listening to, like, I'd rather just watch a fucking movie than listen to two guys crack knock jokes about something. You want to
they're always bad jokes. Always bad jokes. You know, it's like they're not even interesting. Yeah. It's like it's more interesting. I mean, the kind of are you aware of Joe Frank? Have you heard of Joe Frank?
No.
Oh. You have got to. Okay, Joe Frank is a hero of mine. He's a radio hero. He's been around a long time. He not only does he do these incredibly weird monologues that are somehow mesmerizing with his voice like this, but for a while he was doing some interesting things, like he would call his ex-girlfriends on air and get them to, like, you know, respond to how he was as a lover. He would do some outright annoying things at times, like he would just like he would sing to people on the phone. He would really push the boundaries of what radio can be. And unfortunately, like, I think you could actually, like, go to his site and buy, like, his complete recordings. But this guy is a legend, and if you've got to check out Joe Frank. It's as simple as that. Like his more recent stuff, he's gotten old and it doesn't have the vitality or the energy. But this guy is a radio legend. He would somehow absorb you with the strangest stories, but he'd make them seductively calm and human in a weird way. Like, you know,
I think that's the factor of him talking about his own stuff, though, because, like, one show I really can't stand that everybody loves is Howard Stern. I think that dude's a fucking radio therapist. Like, he's trying to dig into but he's digging into, like, the bad shit where people are like, you could tell people are getting uncomfortable. They don't want to talk about it and shit. And he's just like, keeps prying instead of moving off and going on to something else. Or he lets your guard down and hits it. I'm like, that's what's crazy. It's like, he's doing that for viewership. Like, it's the whole factor of, like, what could we do for viewership? I could freaking talk about a bunch of outrageous stories that don't happen, but my life's already pretty fucking outrageous. Like, only on the factor of like, I feel like somehow, you know how people talk about in the coronavirus, they feel like they fell like a peg out of system and now they're trying to get pushed back in. I've been like that my whole life, where, like, every conversation I've ever had with someone has turned into this weird ass thing. Like, for instance, just yesterday, I was at work, went to the bathroom. So there was a guy probably your age with two little kids, like his kids that took to the gym, but they were probably 15, 16, like couldn't really drive by themselves. So they were doing a workout together or something. But then there's just an old naked man that's just toweling off, but not his balls or anything, his head. Drying off.
I'm sure you see a lot of those old guys, because at a certain point.
Hold on, it gets weirder. It gets weirder. He's toweling off his head, just drying off, and he's naked, ass cheeks, everything hanging out. I'm trying to piss. This dude comes up behind me, the dad, and he's talking on the phone, ordering Chinese food, because right next to us is a Chinese restaurant. He goes, "Can I get a small order of lo mein?" I swear to God this happened. And his kid's just sitting there staring at him like, I mean, enough to where you would have recognition of, I can piss by myself. I don't need to follow my dad into the bathroom to listen to him order chow mein while an old naked man's toweling off beside him.
First of all, who the hell orders food while in the bathroom?
That's what I'm saying, is my life has just ended up into this, like, where I'm like, is anybody seeing this shit? Am I on punked? And it's been like that my whole life. So, like, those stories I tell, they're all happening. I could glam them up or anything, but that's why I get so obsessed with radio dramas, because I love doing impressions. I love having these scenarios, and the only time I ever get to talk about this is when I fucking do it. So I'm like, when I go out into the world, I'll play an accent. Someone's like, "All right, you're a Star Trek fan. Here we go, George Takei." I can only do one thing from George Takei.
Yes, George Takei.
Like, I can only do that. I can only do that one line.
What for? It really comes down to this. What for? A little bit of gusto and a little bit of formality, George Takei.
He's a little sounds a little bit more creepier, but
Oh, I guess with a bot voice, I suppose. Yeah,
No,
no,
like George Takei
there,
sounds creepier.
oh, well, oh, George Takei sounds creepy. Okay,
He sounds more like, oh my. Like
I have been typecast as doctors and psychopaths. I'd either call or lawyers sometimes,
Really?
but usually there was 1 year in which I played I think it was 2019 or 2018. I played 6 doctors,
You
for
strike
various
me as
audio
like the
dramas.
perfect car salesman. Like
Okay.
the
Well, I
energy,
have that
everything.
too. I have the energy, but I can also do the sort of doctor. Okay, let's go ahead and examine. Can you pass me the report, nurse? I can do that particular sort of doctor voice, and I kept being assigned as doctors or mad doctors. I've done that, but I was typecast as doctors, or like people would oh, Ed can do a psychopath because I'm willing to go as crazy as fucking possible on that front. It's like the Mark Hamill thing, which is why Mark Hamill's a great voice.
He's the best Joker I've ever heard, I think.
He is the best Joker. I agree with that. Yeah, yeah.
What would you say your worst impression would be?
God, probably. I have been struggling with French my entire life. I cannot do French very well. And see, this is kind of a bullshit French. I have tried to learn French about 7 times in my life without success. I'm much better with like German and Spanish. But French, for some reason, befuddles me. I think there are some kinds of things you just can't do.
Well, it's got to be in your voice range. It's like if you listen to Joe Rogan, he was talking about there's
mm-hmm.
a range of voices he can do, and there was a bear that he can do. He does a perfect bear impression of like a giant growl. And then I'm like, I'm trying to find out what my range was, and you can tell there are some voices in your range. Like I do a mad Christopher Walken. I think at least a lot of people have told me it's pretty good.
Christopher Walken.
Yeah, don't make me do it right now.
No. Let's spare the world about the 6 millionth Walken impression. Well, everybody can do Christopher Walken. It's just
Yeah. But then there's like I lost my train of thought there too.
You're talking about like everybody has a range in this whole Joe Rogan idea.
Like the French ones like like croissant.
Yeah.
Like it's this whole like there's the stereotypical, then there's this. But like what's really weird, like you talk about doing a pastor's voice for it. Now you could do the Southern pastor, you could do any of those types of voices, but you could also do like it gets weird because then it hits that documentary with Apu, for instance, where the guy who did the voice of Apu, he was getting like yelled at, or they were getting upset. Yeah, they're upset that he wasn't of that ethnicity, and I'm like,
I'm sorry, Harry Shearer. Yeah.
Well, that's the issue, is the fact that when you get upset over something, when you let people know that, oh no, it was voiced by a white person, it was voiced by this. All right, there needs to be more positions that are open. It should be an open market. But at the same time, if you play the fucking voice, it's like the same thing when I reach out to podcasters on here. People are like, why don't you get more, get other guests? It seems like you're always going for like white people. I'm like, no, I'm trying to get females, males, I'll talk to anybody, but I'm reaching a page. So when I see the page, I have no fucking clue what you look like until you come on here. And it's not going to change my opinion of you. I'm still going to fucking chat it up. Like that's the whole idea of things. It's like when you start moderating content and then giving it these restrictions and stuff, it becomes an issue because like my best pastor voice could probably be like, thank you, Jesus. Like I could do that one, but then I would get in trouble.
I kind of like that psycho one. Yeah. Actually, now that you mentioned it, like when I did acting, when I did went in for the auditions, the monologue I used was from Night of the Hunter. I was praying. From the moment you walked in that door, you think a heart started upon you that abominable way that men are supposed to do on their wedding nights. Ain't that right now, Willa? Marriage to me represents a sacred blending between that whole speech, that really frightening thing where it's their honeymoon night and she wants to get with him, and he's like, that body was not for begetting children. It was meant for the ways of the Lord. It's a great monologue, and I would do that, and I would do that with the whole, thing. I would sometimes put love and hate on my I love Night of the Hunter, and I would do that, and then like that is probably one of the reasons I've done so many pastors, and probably also played so many psychopaths. Especially
give me a psychopath, dude. Give me a good psychopath. Like I could do Sling Blade, like
some folks call it a sling blade, but oh God, it's so early on command. The thing is like, to go back to the point of Joe Rogan and characterizations. or impressions. I don't view any voiceover role as an impression. It is a character. It is a characterization. You actually have to it should be something where you do the work in advance so that you can instinctively discover things along the way. Because if I can't discover something in a role I take on, and I'm honestly, I'm more of a behind the scenes guy, but since we're talking about this, if there's no option for discovery and play and instinct, that character is going to land with a fucking thud. It really does not matter what your range is. It matters how deep you can go inside your heart. Yeah. That's my approach with actors. When I have an actor come in here, I have one rule. I will talk about anything in my life, no matter how humiliating, no matter how embarrassing, no matter how shameful. I will talk about it because I want to get an emotional intimacy. I want to get an emotional truth. And I'll do that as a performer. I mean, I'm getting much better at opening myself up. There's been a couple of voiceover things I've done where I've just literally gotten into a place of confronting pain and crying in my performance. And it felt, not only did it feel good to tap into these feelings that were just real that I had been carrying, and in some cases not even realizing that I had such depth in me to channel on the air, but through the microphone. But this was also just, it was really, it made me more vulnerable. It made the performance more interesting. It made the character more interesting. And
you gotta dig deep, dude.
I had producers once say, "Ed, man, are you all right?" I said, "Yeah, no, I'm fine." I mean, people know that I go in this full. I mean, I don't want to call it method because what I do is not even close to Stanislavski, but I have read Stanislavski and I have read a lot of books on acting, and a lot of it is just instinctive. To get a true performance, sometimes you have to take that deep dive. I think if you're if you're feeling it like that, and I have cried while putting these audio dramas together, while writing, oh my God, this is amazing, or I mean, I just really, but you have to be really careful because you can fall off that abyss. So you have, and I have actually in the past where where you write something and become so deeply enmeshed in the character that you start acting like the character. I've written literally all of my scripts, dude. I actually I perform out loud. I perform all the dialogue before the actors ever see it. So I know, one, how it plays. So I know, two, if a sentence is a little too long, because I tend to write really colorful and complicated sentences. My feeling is if I can do it, then an actor who's probably much better than me can do it. But sometimes in that act, you literally I kind of just take on the character. I become the character and I mean, it's not quite like, Daniel Day-Lewis, who lives like Lincoln or who is like that character throughout the entire film shoot. I'm able to shut that off. But what happens is I get so caught up into it sometimes that I just fall down that thing. And then I pick up the phone and I'm in that character. And I'm like, oh, sorry, my friends know, okay, Ed's writing again, or Ed's trying to figure something out.
It's the same idea as what I have is about people that are passionate about their craft are the ones that are best fit for it. Hiring a job or someone, if I was a business owner, I'd be hiring someone that is 100% loving and wanting to do this for the rest of their life rather than hiring someone that has the education for it. You can teach somebody the skills to be able to thrive in that thing, but having a passion for something is something that can't be recreated. It can't be taught. It's something that has to be, there. It's just something that people say talent. It's something that's you either have it or you don't. Not that aspect of things, more on the concept of when you love and you want to do something forever for the rest of your life and know 100% that this is what I want to do and there's nothing else that could change that. You can't teach people that. You can't that's not something you get from an education system. That is something that is just instilled into you by the great beyond. So when you look at that, those types of people are the ones that I want to find what they're passionate about and put them in that position. Why would you hire someone that has a higher level of education than the person that is 100% passionate would lose sleep to do it?
Because they're a team player, and a lot of these people just want to, make stuff that has a specific audience. And as such, you see a lot of wonderfully talented writers and actors and producers. They lose the original thing that made us want to watch them. I was talking with a friend the other day about like, where does Jon Stewart go to from now? Like he's only known as the one Jon Stewart Daily Show guy. Now he's going back to interviewing, and he was good at doing this. But like, here's the thing: the people who came after Jon Stewart, in my view, John Oliver and Stephen Colbert, have eclipsed him, and have also they do a lot more than just being the sort of like the funny guy with a sense of moral principles on air. It's like, how is he going to, he made a couple of films for a while that nobody saw, but like how is that satisfying to him to go back to doing basically what he's expected to do? Will he do anything new? I don't get a sense that
I think he'll do it better. His old stuff where he was a field reporter and like flew over into war scenarios to be a field reporter was some pretty impactful shit. But I think it's all about changing too. I don't like people always like, there's the Fresh Prince remake that's coming out. I don't think they should remake it. It's cool to see them all get together and stuff, but we're trying too hard to bring back something that worked at a time period where that fit in. We're in a new time period now where you need to make something new that's going to grab someone's attention. Like listening to your audio drama, for instance, I was hearing people curse. I was like, holy shit, like this is fun to listen to because it sounds like you're having fun creating it. But then if you were just like, well, I'm going to recreate an audio drama with a goblin, and then you just pick the basic template that everyone goes off of and expect your personality to be the one that differs the difference between that and the original one. It's the same concept though. You're working off the same tools. Why don't you restart, wipe all the tools off the desk and start from scratch and build something up? I heard stuff about the earth was blown up and people are living in space, but they're all billionaires, so they have to learn to thrive off nothing. And it's like, that's a perfect concept. That is a perfect concept to understand, like how fucking like I want caviar. And it's like, no, we're having fucking packaged meat. We're having dehydrated food because we're in fucking outer space and there's nothing for us to eat until we find a planet that sustains life. And then it's like, that whole concept is just interesting to me to see it be done in a whole new way. And we're in a world of creativity, but the problem is we're basing it off of what we think people are going to like. And we use our, I guess, initial instinct or primal way of thinking would be to look at something that's done well in the industry. And that's an issue. You got to revamp it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is I've already made a promise. Like I have a 4-season plan in place with the gray area. And I know that I have enough passion in the tank for 4 seasons. If I get to the end point of this 4-season arc, which has been planned from the very beginning, there's a Bible in the other room, a thick binder with like the 20 scripts, which are the prototype for where I take for the first season, I took the first 5, took them out, and I rewrote them and rebuilt them and revised them. And then some new stories came out of that. Same thing happened for the next 5. And now, I have a plan in place. I mean, but it's also very open to change. It's open to, like, for example, there are actors I like to work with. There are, the receptionist was never going to be this as prominent a character as he is. And I had no idea that he could be. And Zach and I really have worked, and he's in on my season 3 plans. I try to also keep in touch with all my actors. And I say, okay, so for season 3, this is where we're going. You may want to read up on this person, or here's a link to something you should see. We'll be recorded in about a year. I'd like to plant little seeds. But the thing is like, these actors are also, my passion is enormous enough, thankfully, for my actors to run with the ball, to also be passionate. And it's like, I don't ever want to work with people who are not into this. Like when I get an actor, when I cast an actor, I do this. I actually meet with the actor in person and I just talk regular conversation. I know you got the talent. I know you got the skill, but how do we relate as human beings here? Like, David Lynch, I know, does this. It's funny. I started doing this without any knowledge, and David Lynch is one of my heroes, but like, I did this without knowledge that he actually does that. And that's why his movies are interesting. That's why his actors are always having a fun time.
And it's the same reason why Adam Sandler gets a lot of shit. People are like, why does he always cast the same people in his movies? I'm like, if you find a template that fucking works and you connect with all your people that are on set, why wouldn't you use them again? That doesn't make sense.
Weird Al Yankovic has been touring with the same people for 35 years.
like you find something that works. Like I could pay $1 billion. Like, let me tell you something. Honestly, I can use this even with the podcast. The whole factor of I've had podcasts with people that I have requested I mean, sent emails and spent months and months trying to get, and it wasn't as fun as just a regular DM where somebody I never even knew came on and had a conversation with me. And it's that whole idea. I even talked about it. I put a post on about, I guess, on Twitter. I was like, would you rather be like, I've done reaching out to famous people. It's this whole aspect of I've had funner conversations with people that just are in it. They're there.
Yeah.
When you're reaching for something thinking that they're going to fulfill your needs based on what you've seen them in, it's like, no, you need to make sure you guys have a vibe, a connection. And sometimes that isn't there with a lot of famous people. That's not there because they don't really give a shit.
I would like to disavow you. There are plenty of actors out there who are very famous, or writers who still love what they do. But the reason why they are like, wow, that author is so nice, or that actor is so nice, great to work with, that's because they're still interested in growing and they're still interested in having fun. I mean, I work with a wonderful actor by the name of Carol Jacobanis, and she does all of my computers and GPS, but she really wants to work with me. I felt so bad that I actually ended up writing a character because I knew she could act. And I wanted to I want to keep the actors here by always pushing things further. If you're playing a character, there are arcs and surprises in which you're going to actually not just do the same thing. I have like character shifts. The end of season 2 has a huge cliffhanger. I mean, it's like, it's going to completely just absolutely upend the show. I was very much inspired by Fringe, which you know this TV show Fringe?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Like how that show ended up being like 3 different shows in one,
Yeah.
It starts off as a police procedural, then there's this parallel universe stuff, then it goes into this weird future, and it's just like, I mean, it's an amazing show. And I mean, the other reason that you have to shake things up from time to time is because, like, if you fall within the formula, like, you don't want any fatigue or lack of vivacity or lack of energy to enter into the
You
work
want to keep
that
the
you do.
momentum going.
Yeah, and you don't, as if there isn't constant change or constant motion, or I mean, even Lost, when it was working, kept going because they switched up the template. Suddenly they're in the 70s on the island. And then of course that terrible ending. But like, turns out they didn't know what they were doing. Like, I have a binder that explicitly has what I have in mind. Now that could change. It could very well change, but I have an ending. And also the other thing that people don't do, and I say this to a lot of producers who are starting out, is that, if you are doing like a long game kind of show, you need to do a couple of things. You have to answer questions as the show progresses, because if you don't, you're going to get a Westworld situation or a Lost situation. It's like, why the fuck am I watching this show? And then you are suddenly faced with the prospect of having to answer all these questions and not having a satisfying resolution. So you need to continually, you have to keep questions floating up in the air, but you also have to resolve certain questions. I mean, that's fair. That's the best shows, I think, are the ones that are concerned with resolving things and creating more mystery to keep things pushing forward. And eventually you're able to coast off of your established characters, because by that time you've come to know them, the actors have come to know them, the audience has come to know them, and then you get, really amazing sort of natural organic stories, but a lot of people are like, I'm going to be the clever motherfucker who has like all the secrets. Keep watching. And then you watch and it's like Geraldo opening Al Capone's vault, It's like,
I think I was mostly hitting the vein on the aspect of maybe like a lot of people that come out here that, podcasters to try and get famous people on, spending all this time in the conversation. Even when you listen to it, it's like, I've heard you do better ones with people that weren't, this guy, but it's like the idea of that fame thing. I heard one of the most, actually in 2 cases, one was Prince and one was with George Carlin. And those are 2 people that I highly valued. And then I heard a side of them that I didn't think existed. And it was very, very painful to listen to. There was a person that was on a radio interview with George Carlin. And they said that the whole entire time he sat there reading a newspaper and wouldn't talk or wouldn't acknowledge anybody until he was on air. And then he was this whole different personality. Then off air, he just left. He didn't stay and chat with anybody. There were people, a few of the people there looking at him like his hero, and either he had a bad day with his wife or something, but he just didn't give a shit. Like, wouldn't put the newspaper down to sign an autograph, wouldn't talk to anybody until he was on air. And then with Prince, there was a band that opened up for Prince called Steel Panther, and I heard from the guy who was the singer of himself on the on a podcast with Ryan Sickler. He said that Prince is a douchebag. And I said, how can you say that about Prince? He goes, we played and opened for him. We left our instruments on stage. He came out there, and what Prince does, how he saves a lot of his money, is he doesn't buy his own instruments. He just rents the ones that the band just used. So Prince goes out there, starts playing guitar, and to each and every single one of these guys' guitars that they had out there, he would smash them after he would get done playing. So he put up this dude's amazing, like $2,000 Les Paul right up against the side of the stage and stepped right on the neck of the guitar, like kicked it like a karate board. And the dude's sitting there like, what the fuck do we do?
Wow.
It's Prince. The manager came over, tossed him $20 and said, sorry, guys, and then went. And that was it.
$20 for a $2,000 guitar?
That's what I'm saying. I understand if you fucking pay for the guitar, but don't do that and then have this. It's that ego thing. Once you let that ego thing and you start thinking that you're higher up than other people and you're thinking you're on this level, it's where everything diminishes. And then that's where the content, even though it might seem like it might be a good idea to get that person on, it always ends up backfiring.
Famous people think sometimes that they're being humble and that they're regular people, but they often, in some cases, they don't recognize their inherent privilege. They don't recognize the fact that, like, you know, someone is going to be looking at them. And I think if you have any kind of fame whatsoever, you need to recognize, like, you know, your position in relation to somebody else. And I love working with these younger actors because I learn from them. I really recruit the best possible people I can find, thankfully in New York, where there's just a lot of great talent. It turns out to be a lot of talent also in Adelphi. I've recruited a number of my cast from there. They just happen to come from Adelphi. Adelphi somehow gets the gray area material, and I'm continuing to work with these amazing kids. And it's like, I learned from them, and I'm also like, you know, that's what you have to do. You have to also acknowledge that, okay, like, now that I've done the gray area I've done 29 of these things, right? So some people I know also, like, you know, now really want to work with me and have approached me. And I try to shift the dynamic a little bit so that the other person knows that I'm learning from them rather than them looking up to me. My rule on the gray area is that everyone is a creative equal. Everyone. I mean, like, I write the scripts, I direct, I put the thing together, but as far as I'm concerned, the actors are on that same level because I could not do this without them. And I have to be very supportive of my actors. I love them all fiercely to death. I would take a bullet for them. You know, it's like that is the kind of loyalty and camaraderie and egalitarianism that I like to put into practice. And when you do that, it really makes everything easy to discover. The kind of actor you have to watch out for is the mercenary actor, the actor who is in this for a paycheck. Like, I pay my actors, I can't pay them a lot, but you know,
I'll do it for free.
Well, yeah, I still pay everyone. Even when people do me a favors, they get paid. You know, like I've had some actors come on just because they like the gray area. No, you still get paid.
You can pay me in hugs if you want. I just want
no. But the point is that, like, you know, where was I going with this? Like, I forgot where I was trailing off. The point I was trying to make is that, you know, the actors need to know that they are of incredible value. But mercenary actors, that's what I was talking about. So sorry, I kind of just got trail off there. There's a kind of mercenary actor who is in it only for the paycheck. Only for the paycheck. I do not want to work with those people. Like, you know, like, I'm an independent producer. Do you think I'm Hollywood? No. Do you think I'm a trust fund kid? I'm not. You know, I am not, you know, I'm going to pay you, but, like, you know, I've had people who are only interested, like, you know, I usually filter those people out and I'm usually pretty good, but I discover when I start recording with them that they are mercenary actors and they're doing this for either pay or some kind of clout or some sort of stature or something, or credit. You know, I want to work with people who fucking love this. And fortunately, among my cast of regulars, these are people who are absolutely passionate about acting, who constantly check in on me, and and some of them are having a long list of credits saying, "Oh, what do you got planned for me? What do you got planned for me?" Yeah, because those are the people you want to work with. The people who are in this for a paycheck. It's like, you know, the acting profession is doesn't pay very well. Even if you do hit it big, it's like, what are you doing? Become a doctor, become a lawyer, become a corporate Wall Street type. I don't, if you want money, do that. Don't come into this field and expect this to be like a cash bonanza for you. I mean, there's obviously it's good to pay people, and it's good to like do that and to keep your operation afloat. That makes complete sense. But this whole business of just like working with someone and considering it a mercenary relationship, so this is the underside of the George Carlin reading the newspaper example that you mentioned,
Well, as much as I would love to be a voice actor on your show, and I would do it for free because I just love breaking out impressions.
If you were, look, season 3 is going to have a lot of things.
But I want to recommend my buddy Mark, because his episode, he does a spot on what Wolverine would sound like, and he just he has a great vocal range of things. But me and him, we have the only episode where it's Christopher Walken and Wolverine selling tampons. So I'm just saying I always recommend him over me. I love just doing it because it's fun to do. I've only been on a couple audio dramas, but he's an actual voice actor and stuff, and he loves doing it for the craft, and he should have a lot more credit. Shout out to him if he's listening. But it's the aspect of everyone wants to get the guy that's known in the industry already is having this big build up, and I'm like, no, you gotta let the people that start off somewhere try and build up that build up.
Yeah, it's funny, and the thing is when you know a voice, you know the voice. Like, so Virginia Gaskell, played by Chris Smith. This happened. I heard her voice on. I ran through her voice somehow, and I said, "That's it. And actually, her email did not work. Her YouTube did not work. I had to have her as Gaskell. It was like you hear the voice and you instantly know that's it. She's got it. So I was actually calling theater companies saying, "Can you have Chris Smith call me, because I've got a really good role for her?" And I was calling, and then she called me back, and we were laughing hysterically. I said, "I've got this role called Gaskell, and now she's a regular, and now she's become a friend too." I mean, it's like these are the amazing sort of things that sometimes happen, or sometimes Ingeborg, who plays Jill Swanson, Jan Swilson, anagram there. But that was a case where she sent a file. I instantly knew, and literally like 10 minutes later, I'm talking with her on the phone and I'm offering her the role. Sometimes you just know. Or one time, there's other people who, if they really, really want to do it, like one of the KJs who before the pandemic, I was a karaoke king in 2 venues. Like, I would go there and I'd get I'd only pay for 1 out of 4 drinks because they would want me to sing. And the KJ really wanted to be in my audio drama, and so I said, "Okay, I've got 1 role left. Can you do it?" And then he thought that I wasn't serious, but I actually was. And we got him in. Same thing goes with some people who I sometimes say to some people, like, "Okay, you're going to hear from me in about 2 years," and I'm like, "What?" "Yeah, you're going to hear from me in about 2 years. I have you in mind for something." And then I get a call 2 years later, and I said, "Oh my God, you were fucking right." Yes, of course I was right. Yeah, because I have you in mind. Just because I don't have something for you now doesn't mean I can't have something for you later. Or your voice is marinating in my mind and I haven't forgotten. So it's like this to me is part of the fun of finding opportunities for people and working them into the show. So why would you go ahead and go for some sort of mercenary paycheck actor? It's like when there are so many people who really love to do this and who you can find ways you can nestle them into your audio drama, and then they're going to surprise you with their interpretations. There have been sessions where I've had an actor here and they have offered some improvisation. I'm like, "Okay, I'm going to rewrite the script right now. We're going to put that as a part of your character." That's part of the fun too. You have to be open to being very decisive, of which I am. You also have to be open to being very instinctive, which I am. You also have to be open to being very improvisational. And if you have all those 3 things in play, it will be nothing but fun. It'll be worth any kind of terrible thing. Although, truthfully speaking, this has been a pretty smooth operation. I mean, despite the fact that the second season was 1,000 pages of script and we recorded 300 hours of audio for this thing with dozens of 160 speaking roles, I believe, which is crazy, And but at a certain point, you just get in the habit of doing it. And then 2 years later, you're releasing this thing.
Why don't you promote where people can find it, man? I mean, that's a lot of work that's put into something. I want to make sure it gets highlighted.
Yeah. It's so the show is The Gray Area. It's interconnected audio drama. You can find it at GrayAreaPod, GRAYAREAPOD.com. If you want to support the show, I have a season 2 pass in which there's also a bunch of behind the scenes commentary, and you have access to the scripts. And right now, we just completed phases 1 and 2. Like the second season is 19 episodes, which is insane. Some of them as long as 85 minutes. Okay. And actually, I mean, like I'm now making feature film like audio drama, and it moves. Okay, which is weird. But so right now, I'm in the process of finishing up. I've got the remaining 6 stories of season 2 are in rough cut right now. I'm now working on the sound design, and we're going to be releasing those sometime in early 2021. But you can listen to all the stories that presently exist, which are 29 minus 6. That's 23 are up, which is that's insane. So, and then once I finish those particular stories, which will be released every 2 weeks as they have been in the past, I then start work on season 3. You see all these books over here? That's my season 3 research. That's my season 3 research part.
I'm jealous of the cycle that you have.
Oh yeah, it's a good cycle. Yeah.
I'm a gym guy. What do you see?
Oh yeah. Oh, of course you're a gym guy. Yeah. I bought that bike. The exercise bike I bought because it got too cold to walk. I'm a big walker, and I got it like in January or February, and then the pandemic hits. So it turns out it's pandemic proof as well as weatherproof.
That's what I'm saying. Is during the pandemic, I had a cycle in my room. I would play Call of Duty, and I would just cycle for 6 hours before work.
Oh, dude, I burned through Cobra Kai on that exercise bike. That was an excellent show. I love Cobra Kai. That was the most joyful show I've seen this year. My God.
It was a good one for sure. But I'll make sure I link all your links in the description so people listening can be able to find the content. And thank you for listening to this episode of Out of the Blank podcast.